If any of you guys are looking to learn more about Bubble, whether you're a beginner or a professional looking to get certifications and take your skills to the next level, you got to check out NoCode Alliance. It's been a personal project of mine for the last 2 to 3 years. I have 5 different courses there, all focusing on Bubble and taking you from zero to pro. And these courses tell you everything you need to know to start earning 6 figures as a Bubble developer. So go to nocodealliance.org, either get started with the beginner course or take our package and go from zero to pro in the next 3 to 6 months, and you won't regret it. That's nocodealliance.org. Back to the show. Welcome back to This Week in No Code. I'm your host, JJ Englert, here with my co-host, David Powell, and we have another exciting week for you this week in No Code, plus a little bit of AI. We have the Bubble Boys joining us later in the episode for an interview. They both work at Bubble as Bubble developers, Andrew and Sam. Tremendous folks. But before then, we have some exciting news of the week. We have Sora taking over everything, more acquisitions. So, David, why don't you get us started with the No Code news of the week?
So what we are seeing is TED is partnering with OpenAI and an artist, Paul Trillo, to showcase the power of AI and Sora, OpenAI's newest text-to-video model, to highlight how we're going to see the future of video. Online, they posted the new TED opener, this video that was created totally by Sora. It is really cool. It is a cool video. It is not
cool video.
quite realistic yet, but it is. If that's what you're going for, it's not something you can make very quickly on your own.
No, not at all. It would take you a lot to make that on your own. And I thought it was great. I thought it was great. I'm like, that probably significantly speeds up their time to creation. Like, instead of that could have taken like 2-3 months, maybe that took them a week, and that's just
Maybe
like
even
this
less.
model is just launching, so like it's insanely promising.
Yeah. And they're, TED, the talk platform, which is known for TED Talks and kind of giving these detailed speeches. They are using this in a way that you can build more immersive experiences. So the talks are not just someone pacing on a stage, but a fully immersive experience, building videos that go alongside with what people are saying, and using AI to build personalized content streams. So it's a little bit more than just, hey, let's make this intro video. There's actually something a little bit more going on in the background. It will be interesting to see how this changes scientific and professional content consumption, not just content for fun. So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Yeah. But there was another big acquisition this week. Webflow acquired Intellimize. Thank you, David. Yeah. A platform specializing in AI-driven website personalization and optimization. This move is aimed at expanding Webflow's capabilities in website experience enhancement. We have a quote from the CEO of Webflow saying, "As we integrate Intellimize into the Webflow platform, we are not just adding features, we are fundamentally changing how marketing teams can drive engagement and conversions without ever touching a line of code." So it allows you to build these AI experiences that A/B test your platforms to target landing page copy to the user arriving there in a very personalized way, which I just love, right? Like a personalized website every time you go to it. The conversion rates have to be much higher. Like, you got to imagine there's a lot of benefits that come with this. No one has really done it well yet. This is I think a bigger acquisition. I think the latest valuation of Intellimize was like 40 million, 45 million. So you got to imagine Webflow paid some good money for this and feels strongly about this as the future of where they're going as a platform for marketing pages, blog content, all that kind of stuff, marketing funnels to help their teams using Webflow drive more sales.
Yeah, they said in the press release that companies like Sumo Logic and Snowflake increase their conversion by up to 60% using tools like this. This is something that, the average indie hacker may not be thinking about. How do you optimize your website conversions? Some people think, hey, I'm just going to change the copy on my website, the format, just do it once and see how it performs. This is super scale marketing optimization. This is Webflow going, hey, we are not just a website company, we are a marketing company.
Yeah.
And we are just using landing pages and websites as part of your toolkit and this optimization. There are whole companies that do just this, like Optimizely. I think now Public is just an A/B testing company, helping with this conversion flow. Bringing this into Webflow can also help them kind of move up market a little bit more enterprisey at scale. Hopefully, it doesn't make things more complicated in the app, right? Where you have to use Intellimize in these ways. Um, it's just a nice new feature to have instead of hooking up a bunch of systems. Like in Bubble, we used to have to use the Google Optimize A/B tester. It was just another system that you had to
Yeah.
add. This
Yeah.
baked in is pretty nice. We'll see how seamless it is.
Yeah. What about Beehive, the popular email newsletter
Talking
builder?
about websites and Webflow, Beehive decides, hey, you know what? Newsletters are not enough. We need to build a website builder. And so they launch their own website builder. Uh, I don't know what it's called. I hope it's called Honeycomb. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's just like a
Beehive or
built-in
something.
website
It's just
builder
their
to their
own, yeah,
existing
just their own
product.
website builder. This is what seemed like a logical next step for newsletter and content creators to build these pages, these landing pages to get
Yeah.
more signups.
Yeah.
Something better than just the simple input, right? The box to collect an email. This is a full website
Helps with
builder.
SEO, all that kind of stuff for
Yeah.
your newsletter to drive more
Yeah.
traffic acquisition and
SEO,
other
look
channels.
at past issues, all of these things. I think this is really an interesting move. Uh, Makes you realize that like what we see on the outside of a company, Beehive, oh, great newsletters. That's what they do. Maybe it's more than that. The full vision, and I know
It's
Tyler
gotta be more
on
than
Twitter
that.
likes to push out some of his like old decks of like what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's more. Like there's more to the story than what we see. And so,
Yeah, I
it's
feel like it's gonna be maybe like a Wix, like an all-in-one run your business kind of thing with your website builder, your payment processor, your email. Like I feel like it's going towards a full stack system like that. I'm a Beehive user. I have been for quite a bit. Um,
yeah,
it's a good product. I'm trying to find ways. Like I don't want to like it as much as I do because like sometimes that kind of personality rubs off the wrong way against me. But it's a great product. They got
yeah,
good features. It's a little expensive, especially for like a smaller newsletter like mine. But generally, like the editor for the newsletter is that Notion style editor. The web page is professional and presentable. You have plenty
yeah,
of customization things. It's kind of just loaded with features. Like they keep on throwing features at you in a good way, and it doesn't
yeah.
seem like they're missing the mark in that sense. So I gotta imagine they're gonna keep doing well.
Yeah, this is cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder what else is coming. I mean, hope I don't think they're ever going to try compete with a bubble. Like that's not their
No,
goal.
no,
They're not building such a full website builder that, you wouldn't ever use their website builder without their newsletter tool, but they're taking their stance going, "Hey, with one product you get both."
yeah,
So you're competing against other newsletter platforms.
yeah.
That's
Well,
great.
why don't we get into our interview of the week? But before that, we have a
Let's do it.
quick advertisement.
All right. Well, now a quick break for our first sponsor of This Week in No Code. JJ, who's our sponsor?
Design. Wonderful Chrome extension for Bubble. It converts your Figma designs into Bubble by copying your Figma designs and pasting them into Bubble using their Chrome extension. They're going to save you 5, 10, 20 hours a month in doing this manual, laborious activity of bringing your Figma over to Bubble that you do for every build. But not only that, they also have a pre-built library of components. So if you don't have a designer, but you are looking for beautiful UI components, you can copy those components into your Bubble apps. You got to do it.
And just for our listeners, we have a special invite code and discount that you can take that $25 and even save more. I think it should be way more than $25 and a discount. You'd be crazy if you don't sign up with the link in our episode, in our show notes. Get the Chrome extension, start clicking, start designing, and build beautiful pixel perfect Bubble apps.
Back to the show. So here we are with Andrew and Sam, Bubble developers at the Bubble team, but also just awesome no coders. They have both a really exciting way into no code. Andrew, Sam, who wants to start off of like telling us your journey of kind of how you got into this crazy industry?
I'll let Andrew start because we followed very similar paths and he came first. So
Okay.
it makes sense to start with Andrew over here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No code in general was not part of the plan for me. So my parents own a small business based down in Florida. It does or not even just high school senior portraits, but school portraits in general. And I grew up in that business. I worked in the business for about 12 years and loved what I was doing. One of my favorite things about the business is that school photography is actually very data driven. So there's a lot of data. You're handling student data, images, all of that. And from the beginning, my dad gave me a lot of freedom to experiment with ways to make our workflow more efficient. And so that introduced me to the world of no code, originally with Airtable and Zapier, actually. So those were kind of my gateway drugs into just what's possible, even if you have no idea how to code. And pretty quickly, I found myself getting frustrated with the fact that with both of those tools, you have to have other tools. They have to connect to other things. Data has to come from one place and flow to another place. And so when I originally stumbled on Bubble, the biggest aha moment for me was just that everything I needed was in one tool. So data creation, management, interaction, all of that could live in one tool, which as somebody who wasn't really technical, that was attractive. Only managing one place instead of multiple places. And so we knew that we wanted custom software to run our business and couldn't afford to have it coded. And so Bubble was the dream solution to be able to do that.
Did you try find a team to code it, or you're just like, hey, we know custom code won't work. Like we can't do that.
We just can't.
Yeah, we knew. So
Okay.
School photography is a pretty small industry. And so you hear from people that have had things coded and the price tags that we were hearing, we just knew that that wasn't an avenue that we could go down.
Yeah. And you said you got into Zapier and Airtable. How much longer was it until you found Bubble? Was it like a 3-month, 6-month immediate thing?
Honestly, probably a couple of years. I started very slow where we would, I think the very first thing I did was a contact form on our WordPress based website that went into Zapier.
Yeah.
And then through Zapier into Airtable so we could manage all of the incoming tickets essentially, and then triage them accordingly. And then it just grew from there. Never intended to become a career, even a full-fledged thing. We just wanted to solve a problem. And then you end up solving additional problems along the way, and it kind of flowed from there.
And so did you built this for your family business? Did you then think, well, who else might need this? Did you expand outside of just of your business and go into SaaS, or stick around for just you guys?
Yeah. So even building it, it never occurred to me that I'd be able to sell it. I think in my mind, my family will trust my ability to build software, but other people aren't going to pay for this.
Right.
And once again, school photography is a very small industry, and word spread that we had a tool that was managing our business. And so I was actually at a photography conference and had somebody come up to me and say, I'll do whatever it takes. Just let me have access to your software.
Oh, nice.
I'll beta test. I'll get feedback, whatever you need. I'd love to try it. And so that really spun out. Yeah, exactly. It was shocking to me. And I was so nervous to give him access. And very quickly, he was running his business on it as well, which just was mind blowing to me. And so that spun into other apps that we ended up building to solve problems for my family's business and for school photographers in general. And then the fast forward version is COVID hit. And it obviously very hard on all sorts of industries, but when you're a school photographer and all the schools closed, what do?
Yeah.
You got to figure something out. And we weren't sure if the business was going to make it, to be honest. We really just
Sure.
didn't know how we were going to make ends meet. And so at that point, I'd been using Bubble, I don't know, maybe 2 years, a year and a half, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so I started coaching NoCode apps as like a
Cool.
side hustle.
I didn't
Like,
know you
okay,
were
well,
with her.
whenever we're not doing
Okay.
photography, I'll coach for them. Incredible program, highly recommend it.
Sam, you did that as well, right?
I did, yeah.
Exactly.
So I
Yeah,
basically
okay.
followed in Andrew's footsteps there.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
left
This is the blueprint, guys. We will be selling a course on this
Yeah.
blueprint for $99. Follow the link in the bio.
Yeah, but Andrew left to come to success at Bubble, and I actually took his job at coaching NoCode apps. And then
Okay.
he
Actually,
moved
his
on
shoe.
from the success team at Bubble, and I joined the success team at Bubble.
Okay.
After some time. So I really just kind of, tailed along Andrew for the past couple of years.
Did you know each other before coaching NoCode apps?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
We didn't know each other until we got to Bubble. I didn't even, because by the time I got to coaching NoCode apps, he was just a deactive Slack account.
Oh, wow. You were deactivated.
Yeah, we didn't even.
It's the
didn't even-
breadcrumb of a man.
Bye.
Afterthought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started quite a while ago. You started with Airtable and Zapier. Took you a little bit doing it, scratching your own itch. You made something in Bubble for your own business, and then people were like, "Hey, I want in as well." And then that kind of led you into learning more about building a SaaS with Bubble and more. Sam, how about yourself? How did you find NoCode? I see a guitar in the background. Are you a musician? What's going
In the
on?
golf club.
So
Yeah.
pretty similar to Andrew. I came from not school photography, but I came from the music world. So you're right about that guitar in the background. For 10 years, when I first graduated college, I went into the music lesson business. So I had 2 brick and mortar music schools. We taught everything from guitar lessons, piano lessons, drum lessons, to K-12 kids. And so we ran those schools in New Jersey. Music is still a big passion of mine, but I would say along the way, the seeds of NoCode were always kind of planted. I was always a very techie person. So was a very early user of Squarespace and, had lots of experience with WordPress,
So
was always
you
building.
helped your parents set up their TVs and VCRs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And, to take it one step further I never hired anyone to design any websites for my music business, right? It was always me kind of iterating along the way and really taking a lot of pleasure in designing that website and updating it and figuring out what I could do. There was always this kind of black box, so to speak, of functionality, where I would say the closest I got to really understanding web development through all those years of kind of tinkering with some of the early no-code platforms was WordPress custom post types, right? And so I remember, if I think back to that was very much I knew you could have these custom post types. I knew that could help you create additional functionality, but this concept of a database and the fact that was so standard across all web applications, that was totally lost. I mean, WordPress really obfuscates a lot of that terminology and kind of makes it so that you think it's this proprietary sort of custom system. And so, yeah, it was running music schools. And then unlike Andrew, I actually discovered Bubble right as the pandemic started. So it was
Me too.
very, very serendipitously, I think it was November of 2020. So the pandemic had been,
Okay.
we're kind of at the full height of that.
Yeah.
My music schools were closed. We were doing all virtual lessons, right? And I came across this Instagram ad for Bubble that said, I remember the copy because it was so eye-opening. It said, I built on Bubble in 9 weeks what took me 9 years to build on WordPress, right? Something very kind of over the top.
Yeah,
that.
dramatic.
Yeah.
But it really spoke to me. I was like, hey, I use WordPress. I find it very
That was
hard
me.
and confusing. Let me check this out. And I think, at that point I went, I had a lot of family members concerned for about 2 to 3 weeks as I just didn't sleep and just learned everything I could about Bubble and web development and all of the different things that it unlocked for me.
Was there but you came from WordPress, but before you got to that 2 to 3 weeks of nonstop, what was it about the Bubble? I know you had this the marketing promotion that you came across, but did you get into it, and then what was it that unlocked it for you?
I had a very specific epiphany.
Okay.
Where I think it was in the very first day that I was playing with it.
Yeah.
One of the first kind of features I discovered was just the concept, and this isn't unique to Bubble, by the way, but this concept of dynamic page data, right?
Okay.
And the way Bubble does it is you can append a slug to a page, and then you can load the current page's thing, and so you could access all this dynamic data. And I had this moment where I realized for the first time in this moment that Amazon didn't code a separate page for every product that they have on the list. Right? Like it sounds so silly now.
Yeah.
But
And
that,
this
in
is
my
coming from
mind, that's what I
WordPress.
thought, right? And this is even, I had experience with WordPress, but I still like that concept of how how the back end connects to the front end.
Yeah.
Was totally lost on me. I never really got it until Bubble sort of made it clear.
Yeah.
And this all happened at a time too, where the pandemic was in full swing. I had a business partner at the music studio, and we both had like said to each other at one point, like, we're fine. We'll probably weather this storm, but if one of us finds other income, we should probably go take that, right? Like it'd be pretty smart to kind of lessen the amount of money that the business was spending. And so I discovered Bubble, and a month later, I applied to Coaching and NoCode apps.
Whoa.
As a client, right?
Okay.
So I hired them to
Okay.
Not
train
teaching
me.
it for a month.
Okay.
And then that was a 12-week program, and I think in like week 2, so it was like a month and a half after discovering Bubble, I saw their job opening and like basically just inquired, applied, and they had seen enough of what I was able to build like in that first couple weeks of the program, that they hired me out of the program, and I started basically doing what Andrew did.
Cool.
For a year. And so that was really my masterclass in NoCode, because working for Coaching NoCode apps, we were able to, I probably worked with 1,000, founders or small business owners, all building different ideas, and helping each one of them learn how to build their concept, throughout the course of a year. So I think it was a very unique like learning experience for NoCode, because I got to touch 1,000 different app concepts. I got to see databases for all these different apps, and sort of working as a coach, I really think took my skills to the level where, Bubble was actually interested in bringing me on and
yeah. What was like the learning? Like for me, it took me like 3 months of learning Bubble before like I could build something, and like 6 months before like, okay, I could like build something real. What about you guys? Where were you at with that?
That sounds right to me. I think I personally picked up the design aspects of it maybe a little bit quicker than average,
With the old responsive engine.
Comfortable with
picked that up there real quick.
Yeah, and I was pretty good with CSS from WordPress and stuff, so I knew these concepts of Flexbox and things like that. And then I would say bulk of my like skill building was spent on like learning APIs, which were totally new and foreign to me. Of like, what is OAuth and how does that work, and how do you sort of, what's a post versus a get versus put and patch, right? Like all these things were brand new information. So I'd say that's where most of my learning was spent. Timeline wise, I would say same as you, JJ, about 3 to 6 months.
How about you, Andrew?
I would say pretty similar. My step up was that Airtable and Zapier both introduced me to like 2 of the core pillars of Bubble. Like Airtable was an incredible way to learn database and database structure, and how to store things in a way that make them usable for whatever your use case is. Airtable especially, you really have to think that through.
Relationships between tables.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And so I really found that those things translated extremely well into Bubbles, and think that I would have struggled way more than I did if I didn't have that kind of primer view into like how that works and what a workflow is, and that it has data that comes in on one end and does something different on the other. But yeah, timeline, if I had to guess, I mean, I had something working within a month or so, but yeah, it definitely was ugly in the beginning. I look back at some of that stuff now, and it's a little scary.
Sam, did you ever build a product before Coaching NoCode, or did you get right into
it? So the product I hired Coaching NoCode to help me build was a SaaS platform for my music school. I am the type of person that I think hopefully a lot of your listeners can relate to. I have pretty severe ADHD and have probably built, 150 different versions of this product in my 5 to 9 life. But yeah, pretty much because I started working full time in the industry almost right away. This has always been kind of like side project, extra mental energy stuff. And I haven't been able to get it across the finish line and actually launch it. So it's one of the things
still doing it? Is that like still a work in
I'm
progress?
still constantly tinkering,
Oh,
and like I
man.
said, I rebuild it all the time. So like as soon as one of like my wife always laughs at me because it'll be like Kieran recently released his new template,
Yeah.
which is awesome, and I'm just like really curious about like these new frameworks and things that come
Yeah.
out. I want to check out every UI library that comes out, or and so once he released that, I just started rebuilding the platform because you have to start you have to start a new app.
Oh
So
my God.
that's definitely like my Achilles heel is just I am endlessly tinkering, and I really struggle with the last 5 to 10% of anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it's my just as like a life skill, something I really need to work on. It's just kind of seeing things through to completion.
Hitting deploy. And Andrew, is your app still live?
Yeah. Shoot Assist is still going. I've got another app that's fully live. It's called Code Return, and then 2 that are in private beta, and all for school photographers. I really need an idea that isn't for that niche.
Well,
I would
riches
totally
are in the
disagree.
niches, like
I would totally
who else is
disagree.
making software for this niche? Like old school, like
Yeah.
providers, I feel like.
I think where I'm coming from when I mean that is like, I love that for a side hustle. I feel like I can solve those problems in really unique ways because of my experience there. And definitely for a side hustle where you can really touch a problem in a particular way,
Yeah.
niche apps are excellent. But I think you get into like situational blindness if you're always solving similar problems, that I think sometimes you can really grow. I was several apps in before I joined Bubble, and now being on the team that we're on, I'm getting to solve entirely different problems that I haven't had to think about, different just feature sets or different challenges that we have to come up against and solve around, that I just didn't encounter with my apps. And I think that's what I mean. Like, if you want your learning to develop, sometimes it's good to just try to solve something totally different than your app, and you might learn some new tools along the way to be able to do it.
Yeah, in terms of progressing your skill set, the more problems you can touch, I totally agree. The better you will become as a Bubble or any developer, right? Anything, you have to go learn how to do all these different things. In the launching successful businesses that can earn money quickly, niches are pretty nice.
I would agree. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if Bubble ever needs to launch that division, a school photography division, I mean, they're well connected.
We're
with
all
you.
over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got that one covered.
So you guys mentioned, or Andrew, you mentioned that, you're building new things here at Bubble. And can you give us like a high level overview of like what your team does at Bubble, and kind of what are the unique problems you're solving without getting too deep into it?
For all of you out there listening, if you are in the market for any kind of software development needs, check out Studio NoCode. It's our agency that's built on Bubble experts with nearly a decade of experience building all kinds of Bubble apps: marketplace, social network, payroll company, catering business, data room, ad tech, legal tech. We got a little bit of everything. We've seen it all, and that helps us translate all of our knowledge into your app to build the best product for your customers. We built it professionally, we built it to be secure, and we built it to scale. And we're going to do all these things on time and on budget. So if you are looking for help getting off the ground, getting something to market, or anything in between, give us a call or an email or a carrier pigeon or whatever you want. studio-nocode.com. We'll probably be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So our team in general is responsible for everything you see at bubble.io that is not the editor. Now, obviously, there's a whole engineering team that's responsible for scale and the foundation behind the scenes as well. But everything you see when you log in and interact with our website, that is a Bubble app. And so we build and maintain that. We just recently split. So I'll talk about my team specifically. And then Sam went in a different direction, which is just as cool. But my team, so we focus on activation. So it's everything new user from sign up to like first subscription. And so the goal is how can we, with as little friction as possible, get a user from signing up to into the editor and understanding what they're doing, like building their first feature in Bubble.
That's a hard
And
one.
so it's a lot of experimentation
Yeah.
where we actually will build multiple versions. We'll measure the performance of users that go through one version or another, and then roll out best performing variant along the way. One example that we built recently that I had a blast on is we're calling it build guides. And basically it uses our OpenAI's endpoints to be able to create a build guide of sorts. So a user will type in what it is that they want to accomplish at Bubble. We'll generate a data structure along with about 6 or 8 features that they should probably build as part of that app idea. And then a list of steps that they should go about like following in order to realize those particular features. And
Fantastic.
so it's all generated with AI, but the goal is just kind of orienting users. So you're not going into the editor totally blind. Like we're very comfortable in the editor at this point, but if you're a new user and you land there, it can be really overwhelming. So having some sort of a document that's specific to your idea, that kind of just orients you and points you in the direction of like the first couple steps you should take, can be really helpful. So it's been a cool one to roll out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We could talk about that a lot. I'm sure there's
Yeah, we can
huge
talk
challenges.
AI
I
and
mean,
Bubble.
there's a lot to get into that. But before we get in there, let's go on to the other side. Sam, where are you now?
Yeah. So
You guys
yeah,
still
we
speaking to
recently-
each
we
other
recently
and all that?
split-
We're good.
Not as much as I'd like, to be honest. I really miss working on the same team as Andrew. But yeah, so I've been working on the ecosystem team now. And so it's a little bit of a different function from Andrew's team. We focus on all of the various aspects that make up our ecosystem. But again, keeping in mind we are the non-editor version of those resources, right? So the things I'm talking about would be like we own pages like bubble.io/templates and the plugins page and agencies. And so we've been doing a lot of work to sort of revamp a lot of those pages, make things more discoverable. So working on filtering and searching and just optimizing these pages to be really clean and make it easy for people to find the resources that they want to find. We also have recently taken on our certification program into our scope. So lots of fun and exciting stuff going on there. It's definitely different. So like I found that we are not doing as much experimentation, which is something I really miss from working on Andrew's team. Just a really cool, like until I worked for Bubble, I never really got a chance to work with experiments. And then also things like just working on a team with a designer and a PM and learning about the agile process and how those types of things go has just been like that. That's been what I've gotten out of working at Bubble the most, is just this is what an engineering team functions like. And even though we use NoCode, we still function in exactly the same way that all of our coding teams do. And that's been really cool to kind of, learn and build some of those habits. I feel like they're very transferable skills that can pretty much apply anywhere. So,
yeah. And how many bubblers are there on each team? Or how many teams with bubblers, like people bubbling and maintaining the non-editor? And
so we have
side point,
4.
can we change? How do we get bubbling to be a different word that it's easier to say on camera?
So we have 4 total Bubble developers on the team, 2 on my team and 2 on Andrew's team. So it's me and Maria are the 2 developers on ecosystem, and then it's Andrew is with John, who is one of the later additions to our team.
Awesome.
We don't really get to talk to too many people bubbling on teams. What do you like? Walk us through what it's like working on a team, how you manage branches, how you do QA, like best practices from the inside.
Yeah, so
Good question.
It's a
Really
big
great-
topic,
really
so
great
we don't
question.
need to go that deep.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah, I get
generally,
that.
you
One of
kind of
the
hinted at this a little bit of just like all the soft skills needed to work in an agile environment with so many other team members.
Yep.
I think also goes into this as well.
Yeah, there's a couple key things I've taken away from it, and I'm going to try to not talk Bubble specifically, but just more like no code building, right? Like a big part of it. So David, you mentioned like version control and branches and like how we kind of handle all that. we tend to do we're trying to take all of our best practices from the traditional engineering worlds, and so we tend to do like a branch for a feature, keep branches short-lived in general, delete them when you're done, and so like that's different than I've seen some strategies of like a branch per developer, and then the branches end up being around for a while and they diverge from the main branch so much. So it's about spinning off branches per feature from the main branch to always just work on a little bit at a time, merge it in, and then just delete that extra branch. But more so, like the biggest takeaways I've had from working on a team and learning this process is mostly around like how things get shaped and prioritized. That's kind of been the biggest thing. I'm someone who just personally struggles with prioritization. And so having a team to help like make up for some of my shortcomings has been really insightful and has kind of taught me how to make some like decisions about this stuff in some of my side projects. But mainly what I'm talking about is just everything we work on. We want it to have an impact, right? Like we don't want to work on things that are objectively a waste of time, right? So how do we measure that? Well, lots of user interviews, lots of data collection and data analyzation, and having really smart and talented PMs on our team who can help interpret all this data for us, right? And so just like my biggest takeaway is when you remove those pressures from the developer themselves, things are much more efficient, right? And so, and not only the prioritization pressures, but the design pressures too. So now I'm on a team where all I have to do is build. The PM tells us what's most important thing to work on. The designer designs it, and then I get those designs and I just get to have fun building it. And so it's really shown me what like an efficient process can look like. Because, and I say this as someone whose solo process is so wildly inefficient that I needed this. Like I desperately needed to be able to see this, how it works, and to be able to take some things from that. Yeah.
Andrew, you want to add on to that? And then maybe at the end, you can kind of give us like a breakdown of like, to be a bubble dev, you need to know bubble like 80%, but you also need to communicate this way. You need a plan. Like what kind of that breakdown of like, what is that good team member you're looking for if you were to add someone to your team?
Oh, good question. I mean, Sam nailed it. The only thing I would add is I've never built faster in Bubble than when somebody hands you like a finalized Figma file that you have to just build. Highly recommend it if you haven't done that, but it just allows you to really plan out your design ahead of time and then go into Bubble with a very specific plan. The only other thing I'll mention is just, I would totally agree with the process. Like every feature that you go into building, we're asking like, who's the target user base? And like, what is the particular problem that we're trying to solve? It can be really easy, especially when you get into the design phase, to lose track of that. That's when you get into like scope creep, or you get into something flashy, but it's not actually solving the problem. And so if you answer those questions right up front, then they kind of become your guiding light through the rest of the process to make sure that you really stay on target with what it is that you're trying to build, the problem that you're trying to solve, all of that. As far as people on the team, I mean, definitely Bubble skills can be really, really useful. I think a varied background too can be an incredible thing in a team environment. Naturally, we've all four of us on the team have kind of become subject matter experts in different parts of Bubble. And so that can be really useful in just being able to like brainstorm and, I'm weirdly good at thinking of the things that can go wrong, which is a blessing and a curse. But a lot of times that's how my mind works. And so I can think of some of the negative things that might go wrong. But all of us bring pieces like that to the table, where as a team, if you're all tackling that together, you can really work through solutioning something out in a really effective way. I think other than that, people at Bubble in particular are just very driven and curious. And I think those are the people that do well at Bubble proper, but also as Bubble developers. Like a lot of times we're non-technical, you're figuring things out. You have to be the type of person that is comfortable digging into documentation and testing until you get it working, and then repeating that again and again. And so I found that people that are comfortable in those sorts of situations like, I just got to figure this out. I got to make it work. Do really well as part of the team and as Bubble devs in particular.
And Sam, I probably assume that's probably why you do so well there. It's just have that skill set. I can see you're just able to figure things out. It's a testament to just the 2 weeks of just like, I got in there and just figured it all out. And now all of a sudden I'm working professionally and 2 months later teaching it in some kind of way. So you guys bring a lot to the table in your own ways. I could see that.
Tinkering is definitely a big personality trait that I think has taken me pretty far in life.
Yeah.
If the more curious you are about things, the more successful you're going to be. It's something I try to teach my son all the time too, that like we have this amazing ability with technology to learn anything that we want to learn, right? Like you can just Google it or go to YouTube and figure out how to do something. And building a curiosity to actually want to do those things is the only challenge. Like it's not that the information is not there, that we're incapable of learning it. It's that most people don't want to go out and be curious enough to go and learn things. So I think it's a super important and a very common trait amongst most programmers that I've ever met. Yeah.
One of the things you said, Andrew, that got me thinking was kind of being curious, and you're touching upon this too, Sam, being curious to just figure it out. One of the imposter syndrome-y things that I always deal with personally is I want to be doing it the right way. Like I want to build this feature correctly. And being on the inside of the organization, do you guys follow practices for certain things that, hey, this is Bubble approved, this is how we build group focus dropdowns, this is how we do, like, is there a style guide of like correct bubbling, or
and if so, I assume you made those yourselves, or like, where does that come from?
Yeah. You're the one saying this is how we do it, right? Like fuzzy daisy chain filtering versus
and we know we're on the daisy chain train there as well. So
oh, top it. Oh boy. Yeah. But yeah, you know what I'm asking.
I think that's where like the curiosity really comes in, because if you get too focused on this is how we do it, you might miss a new technique or a different technique that would allow you to circle back and do it better or solve problems in a different way. Certainly there are some benefits to being able to Slack an engineer and go, hey, I am trying to solve this problem. It seems like there's these 3 ways to do it. From the code perspective, like which would be most performant or what would that look like? And sometimes there's a very clear answer, and sometimes it's, well, test and let's see.
Let me know.
Exactly.
Let's see.
Our team, one thing that just might be interesting. So on I think it's bi-weekly, either weekly or bi-weekly, we meet as a team just to share learnings because we're all solving different problems. And so I've found that to be really effective because constantly a new problem is coming up that we have to solve. And out of that conversation, sometimes an outcome is, hey, we're going to document that this is the way that our team's going to do it going forward. Sometimes the outcome is, okay, that's a way to do that. Let's see if we can find a better way and then circle back. But really, I think keeping the conversation alive so that you can try multiple methods, document what works, and then having some sort of a living document to say, this is how our team is going to approach X problem can be really useful. Because Bubble's like Photoshop, there's 10 ways to do everything.
Right.
And as a team, you do want to standardize some things. Otherwise, it's the Wild West with how you name or how things are organized or whatever it is.
Yeah, I always wonder, how do we pass on better knowledge to everyone in the community, right? And JJ is probably one of the biggest educators and promoters of doing things well in Bubble. We've seen, and I'm sure lots of agencies and freelancers have people who are building maybe the first time using really bad practices that kind of put a bad name for everyone in NoCode because the app is slow or it doesn't work well or it's buggy or, whatever it might be. And kind of publishing these, not just the documentation of this is how a button is supposed to work. The min or the modulo operator does this. Like the definition of it is not as important as when should we be using it? Or when I'm doing these kinds of things, the workaround of, using decimals or commas and in different ways. Um, saw you post something about that, the tips around there.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things could be interesting just to the community at large.
Yeah. There's a tricky thing here where, things change so often at the platform level, and
And it's
not
so
just with Bubble,
big.
but with any platform, that it can be tough to sort of like document and memorialize these things because some
Yeah.
of the best practices become outdated more quickly than they get internalized by the community, right? And so, like, just a couple like recent examples that I've noticed, like we had a lot of workarounds in place for like how we handle our color system, because for a long time Bubble only allowed you to have like 16 variables. Well, we just recently made that unlimited, so now that's not a problem anymore, and all the workarounds we had are kind of. And then another similar thing is happening now too with our schedule on a list action is becoming like super powerful, right? And for a long time, many Bubble developers learned the art of the recursive workflow. And all of our workflows are built like these beautifully recursive actions that take a while, but they work and they're consistent and they're reliable. And that was kind of
there you go.
for a while.
Yeah.
Well, now, like a lot of that stuff, I'm finding I'm still catching myself, even like building on Bubble, like going and building something, and then I realize, like, wait, I set this up recursively for what?
Yeah.
This other action is now plenty powerful and plenty reliable, and will handle this
And
task
faster.
at a tenth of the speed, right? So, like, now I'm having to really catch myself and say, like, no, I actually built it the slower way. I'm using the wrong practice. The best practice is over here, but since it's a slightly newer feature, it hasn't quite internalized. I think this is very common in programming and exists in code as well. Like these frameworks are constantly upgrading. And Andrew mentioned something earlier that's just sticking in my mind, which is like, it surprised me at first how often Andrew and I are sometimes told by our engineers, like when we ask a question, well, I don't know, you should go test it. And and I think that's just such a powerful, because they're telling us that because that's the way that they would do it too.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like if you just A/B stuff and test which is faster, this technique or this technique, you'll get a very clear and concrete answer. And then you can write that down and then test it again a month later to make sure that's still the case, right?
Yeah.
That's the tricky part, is kind of keeping up,
Yeah.
And the big reminder that I would add to that is just that something that is faster in one app with XYZ inputs might be entirely different in another app. And so I think the risk sometimes with community stated benchmarks is just that something that works well in one app for whatever reason, whether it's they have less users or, whatever the scenario is, might be entirely the wrong solution in another app. And so that's where that like curiosity and testing, given your set of parameters, really is the best bet for figuring this stuff out.
And I think that's really important to hone in on for everyone listening in the community. I think, and maybe I'm just putting my own spin on things, some people in the community think that there's just an answer that Bubble is keeping from us. Like they just won't tell us the right answer. The engineers know, they just haven't shared it with everyone yet, and we're just supposed to figure it out. And whatever we figure out,
those
that's
feelings
great.
at times.
Yeah, and like that's sometimes a sentiment. And as people on the support team, I'm sure you get the blunt end of when you were on the support team, a lot of this like pent up, I guess, curiosity of what's actually happening. That there isn't always an answer. Like this is a coded platform that the engineer's job is to get the thing to work, not to optimize it for every possible scenario and write down the benchmarks for when this button, this function should work and when this other thing should. And that it's not this gatekeepery, like, you have to, someone knows. And
I think with any platform, right? Like I'm going to try not to specifically talk about Bubble only, because I think this applies to a lot of different platforms. But when you have like a complex code base that's been developed over many years by many different engineers, a lot of whom are no longer with the company, right? And so how does that and then you're onboarding new engineers to try to learn this sort of monolith and detangle it and figure out what the best practices should be. I think that's just a great point to bring up, which is, like I can say like candidly, but we're not trying to keep any secrets from anybody. We publicize every best
Of course,
practice
it
we
sounds
know.
silly
We
to
have
say out
Petter
loud.
working on the documentation, which he's done an incredible job getting that to be like more specific and more detailed. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right that a lot of times these things are like, the answer is like there is not necessarily a best practice because no one has tested it or explored that functionality yet, and the community is filling in a lot of those gaps because our team is focused on our set of priorities and our roadmap. So yeah, it is an interesting topic that you bring up, David. I'm very very interested in that in general.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about the no-code industry at large here as kind of we wrap up in the last 10 minutes of where we think no-code is going, right? I think generally no-code is maturing. No-coders that started a couple of years ago becoming more professional no-coders. They're able to do more things. But generally, how are you guys seeing this landscape play out from your side? Where do you see, like, we have a lot more players now, it's getting more crowded, but there's still a huge demand. There's still a lot going up that way. So, like, where are you guys seeing the no-code industry at large?
Great question. I think for me, this is a hope, not necessarily a prediction or anything like that, but my hope is that we get to a point, and I think it takes time. I think it takes at least 5 to 10 years to get here, but I hope that we reach a point where like the word no code kind of disappears and the word code disappears, and we're just talking about programmers. That the idea is like programming is a certain set of skills, and there are all sorts of tools that you can use to program an application, and ultimately it will end up being a combination of no code, AI, code, and all of these various tools that we have at our disposal, plus whatever technologies haven't come out yet, right? That sort of combine to empower people and make it easier for people to build applications. And it's one of the most appealing things. Like the reason I work at Bubble, the reason I fell in love with this platform in particular, is this mission and this idea that the person who has the idea should be able to build the idea. It should be one, like from brain to computer application, should be one fluid process. And that's just like a really empowering feeling, I think, in general. I know, like for me,
I know millions have done that as well.
Right. So that's kind of my hope, is that becomes so much more of like a ubiquitous mindset in our society, and that people just understand that like if you have an idea for a software product, you could go build it. It's like you could teach yourself how to build it, and it doesn't require you going to a 4-year computer science program to do.
And the bar is only going to continue going down. It feels a lot like photography. Like back in the day when my parents started their business, it was medium format film, which it's like hardcore big cameras. You have to really know what you're doing. They're very expensive. And only people with specialized skill had the ability to do that. And now everybody has a phone in their pocket that takes plenty good enough photos to be able to put on your wall. And I feel like no-code's doing the same thing. It's taking something that was specialized, only particular people could do it, and it's going to make it available to anyone with the idea. And I don't necessarily think that means that coders or traditional developers are going to go away. There's just going to be a bigger pool, and there's going to be specific cases where one is better than the other, or fits better, is more accessible. But I think more people are going to be able to be at the table developing the idea that they have. And that's a win for everybody.
Yeah. It brings more accessibility to ideas that maybe not have been able to be made before, because you can now do it yourself. You can now afford it, that kind of thing. So I think there's tremendous value there across the system. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are going to be doing more with more platforms. I mean, there are going to be new tools coming. More people are building. I love what you said. With the same person who has the idea should be able to build the idea. I think 4 out of 4 people on this call, this is what happened, right? We all had an idea. We wanted to build it. Some, we tried other things along the way, but we got to a point where we could build it. And I think we're very early in terms of what people know can be done. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I've been talking about Bubble for forever with this guy, and he finally asked me the question, so what can you build with Bubble? Like, it was like one of these things of like, it was a joke platform until I listed all of the apps we are currently building, like not even the ones I've ever built and the one I sold, but just what currently building. And he goes, well, how about this thing? And I'm like, actually, I have a project I worked on sitting on the shelf. When you're ready, we can spit it up and do that exact thing. And he's
Well,
like, wow, okay.
Then they still
Yeah,
don't really get it
let's create
as well. They're just like, oh, okay, maybe like it seems like magic or something like that. It's just like,
yeah,
okay, too good
yeah,
to be
yeah,
true. You got to tell people
yeah,
like 10 times until they, and then you got to actually show them too. And it's just like,
yeah,
no, you press this button, then a thing is created and you're set, you know?
yeah.
And
We're just so early. Like, it's just so early.
It's sometimes hard to remember
Yeah,
that. I feel like it
yeah,
feels like we're like either late or in the middle of it, or like. But yeah, I agree, David.
yeah.
That this is
It is
very early
very
in
early.
code in general, and I think
Yeah,
that 25, 30 years down the road, you look back at this time and go like, wow, that was early to be involved in some of these companies.
yeah.
which is
Yeah, and there are
also
gonna be so
exciting.
many tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many tools doing so many things that are built for specific things. And I think the tide will turn with AI and people going, oh, it's programming. It's not, whether it's AI or no code or code, it's programming. And I think that will be interesting to see
Yep.
how it all goes. Yeah.
absolutely.
Any last thoughts here before we wrap it up? Anything that you want to get off your chest? Anything you want to say? Anything in that way? Um, I will say that I've been teaching once a week a bubble class at night in person. So I teach 30 people bubble, and I've been doing it
Very
through
cool.
the last 2 months. I
Awesome.
got 2 more months, and so teaching in person is really fun, right? Like I haven't been able to teach in person for a while. I've always been teaching video, teaching online, but like teaching in person is so fun.
Mhm.
And like, so we're 2 months in, and they're like, we're building a Pinterest style app together, and like you can start to see it click for them, right? Like last
Mhm.
night, I brought up a student for the first time, and she finished the data source connection for a repeating group. She did the do search for, she put the constraint in, she did the
That's
sort
awesome.
by, and then when she
Yeah.
was done, the whole class clapped for her. And then, and so like those moments are very special. They still are. I think learning
Yep.
anything like that is special, but bubble's tough to learn. It takes you a little bit to get there. And so teaching in person is just generally special. And yeah, bubble's been a great tool for that.
Yeah. That's one of
Oh,
my
I love
favorite
to hear it.
worlds is to teach, and specifically teaching bubble and like seeing people's eyes light up as they actually realize for the first time like what you can really do. Because I
Yeah.
think what David was describing is so accurate, which is like they're like people don't get it until they finally get it.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
tell people like 1,000 times about whatever no code tool you're using or what you're able to build. But it just feels like a shortcut or feels like not quite the same or not the real thing until you actually get your hands on it. And so like
Mhm.
having gotten to do that with coaching no code apps, getting like it's still one of the greatest joys of my life is being able to
Mhm.
see people's eyes light up as they realize for the first time just what's possible with no code these days is
Yeah.
like a really
And it's not even just what, when their eyes light up when they can realize what is possible with no, it's when they realize what they themselves can build.
yes. Yeah.
Like it's not,
Exactly.
oh wow, Bubble can do so
Yep.
much, this is a great
No,
platform. It's
I did
I'm
this.
so powerful, I can do so much. Right.
Yep.
And that's really the
100%.
unlock for them, is getting into that aha. And that's what Andrew and your team, that's what they're doing, right? You're getting to that aha.
That's
Yep.
a goal.
That's
Yeah,
the goal.
absolutely.
It's a big goal. There's a lot there, but you guys are doing a tremendous job. Both of you guys are super skilled. We're really lucky to have you in the no code ecosystem. Thank you for
Yeah.
taking the moment to come on the podcast, share your insights, your journeys. Really appreciate you two. Thank
A
you.
little peek behind the curtain.
Our pleasure. Back at you, JJ.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really cool to see a little bit inside, behind the scenes, behind the curtain. A little Wizard of Oz moment there. One, this is my first time getting to chat with them
Crazy.
face to face and not just through Twitter. It is nice to put a person there, and knowing they were on the support team kind of makes you feel like, just like you're talking to AI, you should be polite to the support team members too, right? For
Yeah.
all of those out there that aren't. It was cool to have them on and see their journeys and how quickly they were able to, be professionals and at a standard that, Bubble is saying, hey, yeah, this is the right standard. I think it's really, really great.
Yeah. they have a great team. Like the people at their team are just really nice people. Sam and Andrew included. Andrew and I go way back years now. Always just great people, just trying to build cool things, right? And I think that's one of the undertones of the no-code industry is just great people, all different backgrounds, trying to build cool things, right? And Andrew and Sam are really, really good at it now. I think it's hard because Bubble's a programming language. I mean, it's hard to learn. There's so many things that go into it: database, UI, security, all this kind of stuff. And so I think they have a tough job ahead, especially on the activation team, of getting new users that don't know about any of this through that journey. I think they're well equipped to solve it, but it's a tough one because while it's such a special product, it does take a while to learn and get up to speed. And I think that's the only reason why the growth might be curbed a little bit, because otherwise the product is so great and you could do so many things with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more people in the ecosystem, the better. So I wish their teams the best of luck to really help.
Yeah, I keep kind of saying this and come back to it as like at the end of the day, like no code platform versus no code platform. I don't think that's competition at all. Like I think it's almost like buddy of like, hey, what are you doing over here? What's working over here? I think the real opportunity is the traditional coding industry at large and all of the systems that are not actually built yet from a technical perspective. There's so much like pen and paper stuff. There's so much really, really old code stuff that no code, all the platforms can get a huge share of and can all win in many different ways. And I think that's the huge opportunity. And so I know sometimes you think platform to platform competing. It's really less about that. That's the no code industry in that way is still very small. That's not the opportunity I think most are after. Most are after that traditional development market, the market that doesn't have any technology yet, because there's just gigantic opportunity there for the no code industry at large to move towards.
Yep. Yeah, we're still super early. We're still like there's still people that are building stuff that they don't know they could be building in no code. They're worried they can't.
Well,
So
they don't even know it exists. Yeah, it's like I got to build software. Well, I can't hire developers. I don't have that much money. It costs too much. That kind of thing, right? So it's like it's still so early.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's another good reason why you should be listening to This Week in No Code plus AI, because we will keep you updated every step of the way. We will let you know of the latest news. We will let you know of the latest tools and the entrepreneurs behind all of this, making their dreams come true. So that's it for This Week in No Code. But David,
and we'll see you next week in No Code.
See you next week in No Code, guys. And AI.